Nestled beneath the shadow of the Unica and Buffalo Mountains in eastern Tennessee lies a vast valley known as Greasy Cove. This was the cradle of the first civilization for the white men who dared to cross to the unknown wilds of the western side of the mighty Appalachian Mountains. It was the earliest Scots and Irish settlers who tried to carve out a new life here in the 1700s. The forests were full of a rich bounty of chestnuts, beech, and walnut trees, which made it a haven for the largest population of bears in this part of Appalachia. European pioneers came from all over to this hunting paradise for their annual winter supply of meat and bear grease. And after getting their share of animals, they would set up camps to harvest their supplies. And during the hunting season, large cast iron pots full of bear fat would be kindled by fire and could be seen all throughout the valley, burning non-stop, giving this area its name, Greasy Cove. Now make no mistake about it, Greasy Cove was in the wilderness. Only the stoutest of men and the hardiest of women dared to call this sea of isolation their home. There was no news from the outside world, no government, and no protection, since this land was still in the kingdom of the Cherokee. The hour of the day was determined by the shadow cast by the sun upon the homemade dial. The time of the night was reckoned by the positions of the stars in the sky. They measured the years and months by the moon, and they foretold the weather by observing the course, color, and velocity of the clouds, and from the temperature and the direction of the winds. The animals were their teachers, as these newcomers studied their habits, along with the birds of passage, as aids in their weather predictions, and they watched and studied them closely, along with the development and growth of the plants, herbs, vines, vegetables, and cereal grains. They survived on what the forest provided. The red deer flinted through the voiceless solitudes, and wild beasts roamed the jungles at will. The fruits of the chase and the fishing rod, together with the pounded maize, supplied the wholesome comforts. Only the wealthiest of men, who called these wilds home, had the luxury of wheat and cake, and that was only at the Sabbath breakfast. Milk and spring water were their only drinks at meals. Completely isolated, they did what they could to break the monotony of frontier life by holding quilting bees, log rollings, house raisins, corn shuckings, flax pullings, sugar maple boilings, and sometimes even the innocent abandon of the dance, all the while enlivened with the brimming gourds of nectared Mountain Dew. It was here that a young man named Andy lived. He had spent his years of youth cutting his teeth on hunting and fishing, and had even made a name for himself as a skilled horseman. And by the time he was 20 years old, Andy was known all over Greasy Cove as a man of adventure and games that required daring, alertness, skills, and strength, and those engaged with the heartiest zeal. But above all these, horse racing was his special weakness. And the truth is, he knew more about the points of a horse race than all he did about the science of government or the 10 Commandments. To put it simply, Andy was known to only ride the fastest horses, and he was a fearless rider that left men in awe. "There goes Andy," they would say, "and he's riding so fast that he's bringing hell and thunder with him." Many said he was just born with it in him, since the fighting Scotch and Irish blood commingled in his veins. In his calm and restful moods, he was as tender and serene as a child. But when the storm of passion swept over his soul, he was a flaming furnace of fury, almost wholly heedless of consequences, and as much to be feared and avoided as an enraged lion. Now, Greasy Cove was also home to a second important character in this story, Colonel Robert Love. Now, Mr. Love was a prominent figure and owned more land in Greasy Cove than any other man, and he was also a patriot who had served in the Revolutionary War when he was a mere 15 years old. His fighting skills and horsemanship caused him to steadily rise through the ranks, and despite his young age, he achieved the rank of colonel by the end of the war. His war pension and the large inheritance from his mother left him one of the largest landowners in North Carolina during the 1780s. Now, Colonel Love was also fond of sport, especially horse racing. So much so that he himself established a racetrack on his farm in the flat land that bordered the Nolichucky River, known as the Greasy Cove Racetrack. It was a half circle and a half mile in length. Now, Colonel Love's horse was named Victor of All. He had taken it to Virginia, where he had defeated every racehorse in the state, and now his horse was known as the champion of the Western country too. And as you might be thinking, animosity soon began to simmer between young Andy and the wily war veteran Colonel Love about just who had the fastest horse on the western side of the Appalachian Mountains. Well, things finally came to a fevered pitch when the young lad challenged Colonel Love to a winner-take-all race at Greasy Cove Racetrack to decide once and for all who the true champion was. And what happens next would change the course of American history. Hey guys, JD Phillips here from the Appalachian Storyteller. Today's video is sponsored by tnnursery.net. Family owned and operated in the heart of Appalachia, TN Nursery ships beautiful plants and trees all across America. Perennials, ferns, vines, trees, and much, much more. TN Nursery's plants can be found in some of the most beautiful spaces, such as the Washington Monument and Arlington National Cemetery. And now they can be in yours. Click the link in the description to shop America's favorite garden shop. For quality landscaping trees and plants, get 15% off of your order by using promo code STORYTELLER at checkout. Wagging tongues spread the news far and wide about the epic battle of the two premier horsemen of that time. And before you knew it, all of Upper East Tennessee was stirred to a ferment of excitement, which grew more intense by the day from the time of the announcement until the event took place. The coming horse race became the all-absorbing, exclusive topic of conversation at log rollings, house raisins, quiltings, distilleries, stores, schoolhouses, firesides, inns, and even before and after the church meetings. Heck, even the youngins caught the infection from the adults, and the dogs too. After all, if they have the intelligence to which they are credited, there's no doubt that they were casting knowing winks at each other when their respective owners discussed the spectacular horse race and speculated about the outcome of the event. Finally, after weeks of build-up, the advertised day for the epic showdown arrived, and with it, the popular excitement pitched to the highest tension. The place selected for the race was the Greasy Cove Racetrack, owned by Colonel Love. Tall mountains looked down on the lower heights, and these in turn on the spot to be made historic. A poem of nature, a dream of beauty, in a setting of scenic grandeur. The day before the race, the entire area surrounding the racetrack was filled with horses and people, the young and the old alike, farmers, workers in wood and iron, lawyers, doctors, saints, sinners, and even preachers poured in with their wives and kids. Barbecue pits were fired all night long to feed the crowd. Fist fights and big swigs from the ever-present jug of home-distilled brew pushed the betting fever to a high pitch. And as was the custom of the day, any fella who was spitting for a fight stripped down to the waistline, and when the referee dropped his hat, the contestants fought in the ring until one man cried, "Take him off! Once the match ended, the bitten, gouged, and bleeding combatants washed and dressed up and then sealed a pact of peace with a drink of whiskey from the same gourd. Young Andy had been training his horse for months in advance, and the racer knew his master's imperious will perfectly. Oh, he smelt the battle afar off, and perhaps at the same time, the danger in the tinted air. But when the test came, his only determination was to be the first under the string. The very thought of it thrilled every fiber in his body. The betting was fast and furious, and the reckless readiness of the gamblers followed the example of the contestants, ready to risk it all on their favorite steed. They bet everything they owned: guns, furs, iron, clothing, cattle, horses, crops, lands, and all the money procurable were staked on the result. At no other time in history in this section had there ever been so much property to change hands in such a short amount of time. The judges for the event were selected after a great deal of finesse and haggling, and then they were stationed half and half at each end of the semicircular track. Roars of cheers erupted when Colonel Love appeared on his restless and impatient mare with a haughty air of confidence and self-possession as his steed pranced at his side under the full control of the natural-born jockey. Not to be outdone, men thrust their children on their shoulders to get a glimpse of young Andy as he made his entrance into the gladiators' arena, followed by an explosion of cheers. The moment was set. Everything of value in Greasy Cove was now hinging on the impending race, and the tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The wily old veteran and the upstart young man mounted their trusted horses, and with their sudden hatred for each other, each was now a sworn enemy, and it was written over both the riders and the horses' faces. A sudden hush fell over the enormous crowd, and then there was the crack of the pistol. And just like that, the horses shot out like two bolts of lightning. The thunder of the hooves echoed throughout the surrounding mountains as the crowd erupted again with cheers for their rider. The horses, they were marvels of symmetry and beauty, and in fine condition for speed and endurance. They shot out onto the smooth track as if they had been hurled from two monster mortars. Neck and neck, down the track they galloped, like streaks. The yells of the onlookers, packed around the crescent course, would have drowned out the blending screams of 100 locomotive steam whistles. Both horses seemed to realize the importance of the occasion. If Colonel Love's horse was a wind splitter that left a blue line behind him, Andy's horse was like a belated streak of lightning chasing a hurricane. Into the final stretch they rumbled, each rider commanding every possible ounce of energy from the beast, and as they blazed through the finish line by the narrowest of margins. Hey guys, JD here from the Appalachian Storyteller, and I hope you're enjoying this true story from Greasy Cove. Stick around for the ending. There's a twist that I'm willing to bet you'll never see coming. If you like stories like these, I hope you'll consider checking out my new book in the link below. Thanks so much, and now, back to the story. Colonel Love's horse had nosed out the victory. Half of the crowd erupted in a pandemonium of noise, as the other half stood frozen-faced and breathless in a deep, ominous hush. Quickly dismounting his horse, young Andy was the sorest of losers to ever be seen. His Irish blood was to the boiling point, and his eyes flashed with the fire of war. He commenced to cussing Colonel Love for everything that he was worth, calling his entire family a bunch of land pirates. Colonel Love stood before the storm of unappalled expletives and fired back with plenty of sand of his own. and the two men were just moments away from engaging in a pistol duel to the death. The dangerous character of both men was well known, so it was ended by the interference of mutual friends who escorted the enraged rivals from the grounds in different directions. Colonel Love savored his victory as he cemented his legend as the fastest on the western side of the mighty Appalachians. Now Andy was so bitter over his defeat that it's said that he never raced a horse again and decided to devote the rest of his life to practicing law and politics. But don't feel sorry for young Andy. You see, he eventually found his own way. In 1829, Andrew Jackson became the 7th President of the United States. And after he was elected, thousands of cheering Americans lined the streets of New York City, marveling at the new president's unmatched horsemanship as he paraded through the city, sitting high atop one of the finest racing horses in the nation. And that site of that epic horse race today, well, it's known as the Jackson Love Highway in Irwin, Tennessee. And now, my friends, in the words of a hero of mine, now you know the rest of the story. Be sure to like and subscribe for more true stories from Appalachia's past, and I'll see you on the next story.